Let's go.
Welcome to The Integrative Edge, your go-to podcast for fresh perspectives on holistic health and functional movement. Join us as we explore innovative ways to optimize your health naturally and sustainably.
I'm Kelly Demers, founder of the Integrative Wellness Coalition and the owner of True North Performance.
I'm Lindsay Seefeld, doctor of physical therapy and owner and operator of Uplifted Oncology Rehab.
I'm Dr. Kimberly Klimek, licensed pharmacist and owner of Innate Healing and Performance.
You can find the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe so you never miss an episode.
Welcome to the Integrative Edge, where we explore innovative ways to optimize your health naturally and sustainably. I'm Kelly Demers. I am joined, as always, by my amazing co-hosts, Dr. Lindsay Seefeld and Dr. Kim Klimek. Today, we are diving into a topic that affects millions of people, but often goes undiagnosed and mismanaged, and that is thyroid health. We'll explore essential habits that naturally support your thyroid and answer some common questions about this powerhouse gland. So let's kick things off. For those of you who may not be familiar, Dr. Kim, can you break down what the thyroid does and why it's so important?
Yeah, I would say in simple terms, and it's really not that simple, but the thyroid gland is literally your master regulator in the body. It helps you regulate energy, metabolism throughout your body, digestion, hormone balance, and brain function. And so we're going to dive into all those things. But Lindsay's going to start us off with a little bit more of like the anatomy and the kind of the lymphatics connection for thyroid health.
Yeah, so our thyroid is located kind of the anterior front portion of our neck, and it looks like a butterfly. It's like kind of two lobes. And, basically there is such a complex system of vascular, nervous, and lymphatic system like all around our head and our neck. I mean, you think about all the functions of our brain. We have to, our top of our head is so critical in regulating our whole body. And this is a neat fact that over a third of our lymph nodes rest in our neck. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. So it is ridiculous how much filtration and movement all goes around, and especially Kim had mentioned, this is the regulator. And our lymphatic system, one of its main roles is transporting the hormones to our body. And so, it is totally happening up there in the neck, right. The thyroid's pushing stuff out, and our lymphatic system is helping to regulate and move all those wonderful hormones throughout our body. So very, very important up there in the head and the neck.
Yeah, and we'll just dive in a little bit here and just I wanted to explain just some kind of like essential like symptoms that people start to experience or may start to experience if you have an inkling that you may be struggling or dealing with some thyroid related matters in the body. And it can kind of go both ways. We can actually have low thyroid function, or we can have overactive thyroid function. So usually if people are dealing with hypothyroidism, and we'll kind of get into like other autoimmune related disorders as well, but if you're dealing with like low thyroid or hypothyroid function, you can experience things like chronic fatigue, brain fog. You're going to be a little bit more prone to weight gain, especially for women around the hips. Can experience hair loss, more constipation in terms of your bowel movements, cold intolerances, right? That's definitely a big one. If you just like always are feeling like you're cold and your fingertips and your toes are cold, and then it can, produce symptoms such as like depression and anxiety. And then on the opposite spectrum, just think of things as a little bit more ramped up, like your thyroid is actually just kind of overreacting. So you may experience symptoms like heightened anxiety or like chronic anxiety. Some people actually experience heart palpitations, and you hear symptoms of more like bulging eyes. They actually have more rapid weight loss or can't really gain any weight. And I've seen that in some of my like hyperthyroid clients or the ones who have like autoimmune Graves' disease. They may have heat intolerances or be more having like more prone to like hot flashes, and then more symptoms of insomnia. So you can kind of either be hypothyroid or hyperthyroid, and If you have more of like an autoimmune disorder, that's called Hashimoto's, which is, it's more linked with the hypothyroid. And then if it's autoimmune hyperthyroid, it's Graves' disease, where people can kind of develop a goiter. And sometimes, people may have had surgery or like radioactive iodine to remove their thyroid gland. And so there's so much support that's needed in those cases for individuals. But oftentimes right now in my practice, I would say I'm seeing a lot of people in the gray area. And I did Lindsay and I did a whole presentation like last year, I think around this time frame in the community, because it was such an important topic, and it will never not be an important topic. But we had, I had given a lot of information regarding thyroid health at that presentation, and just how it ultimately runs so many things in our body.
So if you touched on this a little bit, some of the symptoms, but if someone is struggling with a fatigue due to a thyroid dysfunction, how does movement play into that? How does movement, physical fitness play into helping the thyroid?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to first just circle back to a little bit more on the basics. I wanted to help explain a little bit, being a little bit more clinical and diving into the labs, and then we can talk about let's talk about the like ways we can kind of resolve this.
Yeah,
because a lot of it, what I was going to say is that a lot of people will fall into this area where they're actually like subclinically hypothyroid. So, okay, they're experiencing some of these symptoms that I just mentioned, right? Like hypo or hyper, but technically their lab work says everything's normal, or they go to the doctor and they get like a single lab called thyroid stimulating hormone, which is a blood marker, and they're just told that everything's kind of normal. But again, all the things that I always tell clients is that if you're still exhibiting symptoms, then that's not normal. Like if these are bothersome symptoms to you, then there's something going on. And so what I feel that there's lacking in, definitely again coming back to conventional care, is that the standard thyroid testing that is utilized. So you go to the doctor, and so many people, I hear it just like clockwork. They're just like, oh yeah. And because I will always cover like very foundational elements. I'm talking to them about hormone balance, which does include, yes, like if they're coming to me thinking about sex steroid hormones, I'm like, oh, well, thyroid is also a hormone too. Cortisol is actually a hormone. Vitamin D, melatonin, these are actually all hormones too. So I'll ask them like, okay, we have to evaluate your master regulator in the body, your thyroid. Is that functioning and firing on all cylinders so you can feel your best? Because there's many routes that can leave you feeling, there's many routes in terms of the clinical lab work picture that may not be evaluated for you. That could be underlying reasons as to why your thyroid's not functioning appropriately. So just bare minimum starting off, you have two thyroid hormones. So thyroid stimulating hormone, it's going to shoot out like one you call inactive form of thyroid hormone, which is T4, and then levothyroxine. And then the active, that actually, most people don't realize that inactive form, T4, still needs to actually be converted in your body to active thyroid hormone, which is free T3. It's triiodothyronine, really fun word. We just call it T3 for short. But the T3 is actually the active form of the thyroid hormone that makes you tick and makes you go and carry out all those functions that I just talked about. And more often than not, we are not getting those labs checked by the doctor. So bare minimum, you really want to see, first of all, where your free T4 levels are as a baseline, and then are you converting that into good free T3 levels, the active form of your thyroid, so you can feel well. The other ones that we'll kind of dive into here a little bit, when you're looking for any of those autoimmune disorders that I talked about, Graves' disease or Hashimoto's, you want to get your antibodies checked. So that would look like a thyroid peroxidase marker and then a thyroglobulin marker. And I just wanted to have our listeners be aware that getting a full picture for your thyroid health is really like the most beneficial way for you to see if your thyroid is really functioning well. Because let me tell you, thyroid stimulating hormone blood marker is literally the last marker that will go out of, normal range when you're so hypothyroid or so hyperthyroid that now all of a sudden it's an emergency. Now all of a sudden we need medication or we need surgery or whatever they're telling you, when a lot of us, there's so many lifestyle things and changes that we can look into, which we'll talk about here, that you can actually work on yourself at home to help your thyroid function better.
So I want to take a step back because you hit on there were so many things that you hit on that I'm like, one of them so I was diagnosed with an underactive thyroid like 15 years ago. And at that point, I was like, I really don't want to go on medication. So we went back 3 months later and they did the TSH, that thyroid stimulating hormone was one of the labs, not the full thyroid panel. They did it with a number of other regular blood work, but it wasn't a full thyroid panel. And that TSH came back normal, and they were like, nope, you're good. And it's funny because at that point, I had the cold hands and feet, losing hair, brain fog, all of the things. And they were like, yeah, you're good. And so I think when I started this podcast, or when we started this podcast, I said there are literally millions of people that are going undiagnosed and untreated because they were told you are fine. And so I think just because something is common doesn't mean it's normal. It is common for people to go undiagnosed with something, but that doesn't make it normal, right? There is help available, and really putting the pressure on those providers to do the thyroid panel. Have you seen through your clients where they've said, well, I've asked about a full thyroid panel, but because the TSH came back normal, they said it was unnecessary?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Time and time and again. And then I have to walk them through this process and actually explain to them, there's actually like 9 or 10 markers you can look at for your thyroid to really see if it is actually functioning properly. And I kind of express those to them, and then their eyes kind of get big, like, I didn't know that. And I'm like, if these labs were truly not, like, if what I'm telling you is truly not true, we won't even have access to these labs, but you're not being presented with these opportunities from your physician. And again, that does tie back a little bit into like the way conventional providers were trained, and some of the things I learned about again in like my grad school training was that they oftentimes won't run them for you just because it's not going to change the way they treat you, because this is just our standard protocol. You fit into this, like this is how we're going to treat you. But if you're looking for something different, right, we got to dig deeper. We got to see the whole picture first. And we absolutely do treat it differently, I would say, from a functional medicine lens for sure.
So when we look at, and I don't want to rush the conversation here, but as I think about this, people that are diagnosed or maybe not even diagnosed, but they're listening and they're like, I have all of those things. I don't necessarily want to go the route of care just yet. I would like to self-treat, or like to at least make a run at some things that are natural before I go in for care. What are some things that they could do? And we've talked about fatigue being one of them, or hair loss, or whatever. There's 100 different symptoms, but what are some things that they could do today to help those?
Yeah. So for me, the way I actually will start to work, and like Lindsay's definitely going to chime in on this on how she helps, but what I would ask them to do is let's reframe your mindset on how hypothyroid or hyperthyroid is treated. And I ask them to actually look at different organs in the body that will actually help them heal their thyroid. And sometimes it's a completely new concept to them, because I'm telling them, hey man, like 80% of your T4, right, the inactive form of thyroid that I talked about, is actually converted to the active form of thyroid hormone, the T3, through your liver and your gut. So when you have issues with your liver health and your gut health, and there's stagnancy there, or we're dealing with like microbiome or gut issues, that is when some of these autoimmune disorders start to creep in. And I want Lindsay to chime in a little bit how she helps us.
What a great segue. Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, I'm actually working with a client right now, very similar presentation. She's got a lot of swelling that I can notice like around her neck. And she too is trying to figure out ways that she can help her body before she jumps into the medication route. And so, a lot of what we're doing and with my assessment, we're trying to target those deeper organs to get her liver, her gut, her stomach, her intestinal tract released. So that helps everything process. And lymphatic drainage is a huge component of what I do. And our lymphatic system is so important for, just keeping our body hydrated. We're keeping the water balance everywhere. Our lymphatic system is where we fight diseases, cancers, viruses, bacteria. And so we've got to find a way to get that lymphatic system open and drained. And with my work, we're practicing ways to kind of do self-releases, what kind of exercises you can do, how to stay hydrated. It's amazing how big of a shift, the gal I was talking about that I'm working with, she is feeling so much better. If you think about like that lymphatic system being so congested, wherever it's congested, it just backs everything up and that toxicity builds in that area. Mm-hmm. So if you talk about someone with a huge, large goiter around their neck, that's just toxicity that's just sitting there. Mm-hmm. And those healthy nutrients aren't able to, come out, go in. And once we can kind of get things kind of opened and moving, they're immediately starting to feel, just their symptoms release. And, some big symptoms that, when your lymphatic system is not draining well in your head and your neck, you're going to have, sometimes people have, difficulty breathing. They're going to start noticing like difficulty swallowing at times, like they're kind of choking on different food, pills, what have you. Sometimes stiffness in their neck, changes in their voice, like they're constantly clearing their throat and, it's just hard sometimes to get the words out. You can actually visually see the swelling in their neck or palpable type fullness in there. The brain fog, which we already covered, just very, just tired all the time, headaches. This is a big one, poor immune function where you're getting colds all the time, your flus, sore throats, excessive mucus. This is a big one, especially in the morning. So if you're waking up in the morning and immediately having to clear your throat, there's an excess of mucus hanging out in there. And I love to touch upon this, thermography is an amazing tool out there to really detect inflammation. So if you don't know what thermography is, basically it's a picture, a thermal picture that they take of where you can have a full body done. You can have, a lot of women will do it for the breast tissue, but you can do kind of a head and neck assessment as well. And from that thermography scan, it really paints a great picture on where is the stagnicity in your body. And just having that image, it really directs, it helps me direct my care because I know where we need to work to open up your lymphatic pathways and help your system start cleansing and moving and help it heal internally. So I think that's just a beautiful way to start if you aren't quite sure where to start.
For sure. And just so you know, if you're listening to this and if you're not familiar with the term thermography, we are fortunate to have Ash and Mint Thermography in Green Bay. And Nicole will walk you through your results so that you understand actionable next steps to take. So it's a really helpful tool. And in some ways, just probably one of the most helpful tools because it shows a complete picture of where that inflammation is, where to take action first, and really driving the fastest result towards better health.
Yeah, something I'm thinking about too is like when I'm directing clients on how to support them, I honestly, my approach to it, I take just, I would say even just a different approach too. Like my goal is not to be like, okay, like you can, even like integrative medicine, right? Like we'll see these levels maybe low, it's low free T4, low free T3, like, oh, we know what's wrong with you. Let's give you this combination medication of levothyroxine, liothyronine, and that's gonna fix everything. But like, okay, great, it's a tool, right? Yes, if you are super deficient and you get a little bit of these things that your body is just completely missing, it's gonna help you feel a little bit better. But I would really like to encourage my clients that, if you really haven't had like surgery, really your thyroid removed or anything, like I'm willing to help your body help your thyroid do the job that it's supposed to do on its own if we give it the right tools, the right environment. So I start to express to them things like, okay, we need to actually look at like micronutrient deficiencies. So here's a little bit more in-depth lab work and things like that too that you can kind of look at, but it's like you will look at like ferritin levels, vitamin D levels, iodine, man, oh my gosh, iodine is super important. People get a lot of like fear-mongering information regarding iodine, but I've seen the link on that and how like TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, tends to rise when we start to become iodine deficient, because, and I always tell people this, like it's like my thing, I'm like, we are not eating like seaweed or kelp every day, which is a high source of like iodine. Most of us are iodine deficient. So getting a little bit more iodine and microdosing iodine and using that can actually help prevent, for women, fibrocystic breasts, cysts and fibroids on your ovaries. For men, it's prostate health actually by having sufficient iodine. And then it helps your thyroid tick. And right now, it was like, we have different like environmental things that actually, oh man, we got a lot of environmental pollutants and things that are working against our thyroid. Like I did a fun little video the other day about how I'm the crazy person, because when I go to the pool, I will spray all this vitamin C on my body before I jump into the pool, because when I started to increase my swimming more with triathlon, I started to notice, and I get full blood work checked for myself, usually yearly with my thyroid, and most things are doing well, but it was like, okay, I started to see a little bit of my thyroid globulin antibodies go up, and for me, in clinical practice, that indicates a little bit more iodine deficiency in the body. And I thought to myself, nothing really changed much aside from just getting more exposure to these halogens like chlorine, bromine, and fluoride, which a lot of us are exposed to fluoride, and you don't really realize it through like contaminated drinking water, and obviously in some of the toothpaste and things like that. I mean, we'll probably get a lot of people hating on me from like dental offices here, but like I avoid these toxins because I'm well aware of how they affect my body and they affect my thyroid health. So I'm willing to kind of stand in the fire and say, hey, like, no, there's actually research here that shows that these things affect how my master regulator is helping my body here. But I tell people, okay, yeah, we do got to look a little bit at some of these more labs, and like super foundational thing, people out there, like selenium and zinc, literally eat your Brazil nuts.
Yeah.
I tell people like eat like 3 to 4 Brazil nuts a day. That's like all the selenium you need, or get a supplement if you can't really if you don't really like Brazil nuts. But those are actually 2 cofactors that literally drive that conversion process for the inactive form to go to the active form of thyroid. And when you think about it, not a lot of people are thinking about selenium and zinc. So it's like, get your pumpkin seeds in, get your oysters, whatever you got to do if you need a supplement for it because you don't like those foods. Like it's a good, just a good strategy and tool to be thinking about those micronutrients, because those are the things, those little puzzle pieces that have to be in place that your body needs to thrive. And then you kind of start to ask yourself questions like, okay, if I am eating some of these like essential foods and still things aren't really improving for me, that's when we dive deeper into like gut dysbiosis and what's, I've talked a million times about how leaky gut is like a gateway to autoimmune disorders. And so oftentimes I have so much research and literature that links Hashimoto's to leaky gut and dysbiosis and things that are going on with your gut health actually. So again, it's not for me, it's not the fancy work of like functional medicine, but I'm like, hey, we actually got to start with like doing a liver cleanse here right now. First of all, let's just bare minimum start there. And that's going to allow your liver to open up a little bit more, get some lymphatic professional help so we can get these pathways open so that your body can actually do the job that it was meant to do when your organs are functioning properly.
Yeah, I love this because it's just the foundation of everything that we do, that we've been talking about with this holistic health. And we're just not slapping a pill on you to fix your thyroid here. Like we're trying to coach you on ways you can help heal your body internally, because our body is amazing. It can heal itself. And that's exactly what we're trying to do. We're trying to dive in and try to figure out ways we can really help internally heal our body. So this is the root of everything we do here.
For sure. And I love that everything kind of comes back to that sleep, diet, stress,
Yes.
stress management. We talked about, just got done wrapping up nourishing your thyroid naturally and incorporating foods that are foods or supplements, iodine, selenium, zinc, prioritizing lymphatic drainage, gut health, minimizing toxins. We talked about getting the right lab tests and not to rely on the TSH alone, but to really push for that full thyroid panel. The one thing I'm hoping you can touch on is, you touched on just the cortisol a little bit, but I'd like to bring that back to the forefront, because cortisol, we know, can disrupt thyroid function. So what are some ways that you recommend clients reduce cortisol in their body?
Yeah, let's first give that link and how it affects really like thyroid health. So I'm often telling people too, another root cause solution to helping your thyroid function, we talked about the liver, we talked about the gut, is actually supporting cortisol. Everything that I kind of learned in functional medicine training tells me, the way we actually help support thyroid is supporting our adrenal health and our cortisol regulation and stress management. Because chronic stress or elevated cortisol levels throughout the body, that can then lead to another lab marker that I would suggest is more in depth for a full thyroid panel, something called reverse T3. And this you definitely will care about, people, because it actually affects your ability, your metabolism. So a lot of people care about weight, right? Like they're thinking about weight gain and thyroid function and things like that. But if you have an elevated an increased reverse T3, it actually will block your thyroid receptor conversion, which then increases the likelihood for slow metabolism, contributing to more hypothyroid symptoms, more easy weight gain, that kind of thing. So again, the chronic cortisol will lead to increased reverse T3, which slows your metabolism. So we have to focus on ways to de-stress. And maybe you can share a little bit more too, because this is an area too where this is an area where I actually like to work with certified nutrition experts and like in the actual functional movement space, and I say, hey, this is the clinical picture that's going on for this client right now. Could you help them with strategies for their movement? Because certain types of movement are not going to be the best for them right now. Like if they're literally doing like high intensity exercise all the time, it's going to lead to more burnout, more cortisol, and it's actually, that's literally turmoiling the thyroid health.
Mm-hmm. Building on that, having a qualified health coach, someone that understands movement practices, incorporating gentle exercise and strength training and moderation, allows our clients to move in a way that actually supports the body. Education pieces like breath work and how to get quality sleep, how to regulate or navigate stressful situations. Those are key to bringing that cortisol level down. Do you want to touch again on when we look at moving in a way that supports the body, going back to lymphatic drainage?
Well, yeah. So talking about the cortisol level, when we have elevated cortisol level, that increases the inflammatory response in our body. And then we just have general inflammation. And so it is so important to regulate that cortisol by doing different things like, mindfulness and breath work and really watching your routine, that you're not doing high impact all the time. Because once we can get that cortisol more managed, our body is less inflamed. We're in a state of kind of rest and we can clear things a lot easier. So it's just important to find that coach that if you are dealing with a lot of high stress, high anxiety, that's, I think, the foundation. We can do all the things in the world, but if you can't get that stress kind of more managed, it's not going to regulate as easily.
Right. I think it's one of the most undervalued pieces of information is how important stress management is. They are simple things. They are not easy things to do. They are simple things. Eat well. sleep sleep 7 to 9 hours every night, manage stress. And we bring that back again and again and again. And I think for a while, people kind of thought it was like, woo woo, these aren't real things. And depending on the generation, we really have a hard time getting that across because they're like, my doctor said, and we battle that every day. But do you feel better when you do the breath work? I sure do. Okay, then why didn't you do it this time? And it was like, well, my doctor said I needed the cortisone shot. Right, okay. So those things are, they're so important, and I think they are underestimated as the powerhouses they are in building good health. So we talked about really the importance of listening to your body. If things are feeling off, man, don't ignore it. It's really important. Subtle shifts in how you manage stress, subtle shifts in getting more sleep, they're going to make huge differences in your long-term health. Key takeaways, other things that we want to talk through.
Yeah. I think my key takeaway for sure is that, yes, there's personalized medicine approaches to dealing with or supporting thyroid function for sure, right? Even in our functional integrative space. But I'm still encouraging people to go back still a little bit more to the root and look at things like optimizing your nutrition, optimizing your gut and the liver health, optimizing your adrenal health. There's various tools that you can use throughout that process, targeted supplementation if needed. We didn't touch too much either, but hormone balance plays a role because estrogen dominance and low progesterone and blood sugar dysregulation, all that stuff actually affects your thyroid as well too. So just wanting to provide you guys with a little bit more lifestyle strategies. If you don't, I just don't want you to feel completely defeated that you'll always need a medication or that you feel dependent on that, or just maybe you have something because one thing I didn't really talk about too is a lot of people, they get if they get super hypothyroid and then they finally are like, oh my gosh, they finally figured out what's wrong with me. I have low thyroid function, and now I'm going to get levothyroxine, which again, that's the inactive form of thyroid. Unless you're getting a full picture, do you know if you're converting that fully? You may feel a little bit better for maybe for a month or a couple months when you start it, but then it's a little bit like clockwork. People are like, well, I've been on this for years and I don't really notice any changes. The whole point of this episode is really to help you understand that, again, your symptoms are a priority and you need to listen to your body. Mm-hmm. And we're here to provide some, just alternative strategies to help you through it.
Yeah, I think my takeaway is just, seeking out that professional like Kim where you can get started. And Kim is so good at identifying where you maybe need to start, right? Sure. And so I think having that provider that can do that testing, figure out and make a game plan and guide you on where you need to go and who you need to see to help your body begin to heal internally.
I would echo that. If you are struggling with the symptoms that Kim mentioned, brain fog and your hair's falling out, you're just so fatigued during the day. While those are common symptoms and we see them again and again and again, they are not normal. So question it and see a specialist, see a doctor like Kim to really draw out and find a way to optimize your health. You don't have to be stuck in this cycle of not feeling your best. All right. Any other final takeaways?
No.
All right. What a great discussion. As always, if you found this episode helpful, please make sure to subscribe, leave a review, share it with someone who needs it. Thank you for tuning in. If you haven't already subscribed, please do so on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And we will see you next time on The Integrative Edge.